habit. If you're not conscious, essentially, you're in the habit of presenting to the world something and hiding behind that. So whether it's a role, and especially in long-term relationships, we tend not to see each other. We see the history of that person that we've been with. And I kind of make a habit of, especially when I'm in somewhere like, banks or supermarkets or petrol stations, or somewhere where I'm going to meet somebody who's a function of that mechanism. I kind of make one of my practices is to make sure that I don't get caught in being the customer. And I don't imprison them in being the cashier. So they are, of course, and we are doing this transaction. But my work, if you like, is to be there personally. I don't mean like I'm their best friend or somehow I have to entertain them or I even have to say anything. It's not about that, although I might say something in a way that if I'm just sitting there saying, get on with it, I want to get out of here as quickly as possible, I won't. And I've been in that situation. I've been behind the counter, in my early life, and I know the difference of what happens when someone comes in and treats you as a human being. It can change the day. So I kind of know what that's like. But from my point of view, I'm not really so much concerned as the effect on them. I'm more concerned with this practice. I'm practicing seeing, that habit. And so when we're not conscious, when we're not aware of that, so for good reason we put up certain boundaries. The problem is that when that good reason stops being there, we continue with the boundary. And so it becomes a kind of like a habit. And then when we are with ourselves, it becomes a habit even to ourselves. So we're kind of like in a boundary with ourselves. It's bizarre, but it's true. I regard myself in a particular way. And yes, I am that, but I am also more than that. And so in a very simple way, the path of the principles, or the path of moving, one of the things about moving your body is that, as we said before, that the body takes on a particular persona, and which is a persona in the mind and a persona in the emotions. And so the body is mirroring the mind. And so when we move the body, it actually doesn't have to be in TMW, but TMW is a really good way of doing it because it's so simple. And it contains these qualities or principles in the sequence. But just moving your body breaks up that physical conditioning, and we feel better. We feel better because that prison has been broken open. But as my sort of Tai Chi teacher said, so what are you doing for the other 24 hours of the day? It's great you're doing that, but what are you doing for the other 24 hours a day? And so it's that we really, we want to focus on. So we're looking at our practice of, let's say, meditation or sitting, or our practice of movement, meditation and movement, as wonderful as it is by itself. That's just the first part of it, if you like, or that's a relatively minor part of it. Why? Because it's only 15 minutes in a 24-hour cycle. So if I'm making those 15 minutes a doorway, to the other 23 and a half hours of the day, then that's kind of more useful. And so we're using our practices like a greenhouse. We're using our practice to understand, these qualities, and then we're going to, bring them into life. And in this really simplest level, it's just being aware that, anytime you want to be aware that, because when we are separate from reality, we fall into history, we fall into our routines, we fall into an identity of some kind. And so as soon as I just bring that earth in, something grounds. And from there, I can start to soften that position, whether it's a mental position, whether it's an emotional position, more difficult with an emotional position, but actually just as possible, and return to myself. And then from there, do whatever is necessary. And so it's really, in its very essence, it's simply about understanding. And there's no blame here. We all do it. Everybody does it. And everybody gets caught in their identity. Everybody gets caught in their ego. Everybody gets caught in their own reality. And we're all kind of separate. But that's not who we are. That's part of who we are, but that's not who we are. That's who we've learned to be. So the really bizarre thing, actually, in some ways, the really bizarre thing is that what's real to us is truly only something that we've learned. It's not actually real even. We just learned to be that way. And what's really real is like some kind of fantasy to us. It's like, what do you mean true nature? What do you mean the heart of me? What do you mean my true self? It's really weird. It's the opposite. It's truly the opposite. And once you start to kind of see that kind of cosmic joke, it's just sort of like that's why the Buddhas are laughing, Once you start to see the kind of play of it, or its simplicity, or just its, if somebody, I don't know, I'm imagining that if I'm saying that and you're understanding what I'm saying, then it's like, well, of course, I want to, loosen that somehow. Of course I do. So it's kind of obvious. And that then doesn't become like a heavy duty thing to do. Because that's another position. Who are you? Well, I'm doing the principles. That's just another one. So that's why we say that these qualities are not something that you impose on yourself. Because that's just simply another position. This is something that is inherently within us. So all you have to do is just turn your awareness to it. You don't have to make it happen. You just turn your awareness to it. It's like, if you're in a room with, 30 people, and somebody who knows you turns to you with that recognition, you know it. They turn and they look at you and they recognize you, you instantly respond. You don't kind of, even if you don't want to be seen, it's very difficult not to respond in some form. You can, if you ever pretended that someone hasn't seen you, it's like really, really difficult. Something just naturally responds. And so when we turn, to these qualities, these inherent qualities in us, something always responds. Always. It may not be, how I want it to be. We have this bizarre thing that there was that awesome time, and I have quite a few of them in my history. There was that awesome time, on like Wednesday the 25th in 1983, when I found it, and like thereafter, the rest of it is pretty much a waste of time. It's a pale reflection, of that one place. So every time I sit down, I'm looking there, and so every time I'm looking there, I'm missing what is, and I'm kind of disappointed. And I think, but actually, if when I sit down in that way of just sensing how I am, and then I turn towards that quality, always something responds. And if I just allow that response, as subtle as it may be, my ego may not be, like the non-dramatic quality of it, or what I'm expecting to happen may not match. But actually, if I just allow it to be what it is, the whole world changes.